Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. I hope everybody had a great weekend. It was a nice weekend for me since my Pirates won on opening day. I know they didn't win on opening day last year, and I'm not sure what they did 2 years ago, but the last few years, my Pittsburgh Pirates have started out very slowly. And in fact, you could say the last couple years that their slow starts have kept them from winning the division and going farther in the playoffs than they have. But yesterday, Francisco Liriano on the mound looked good. A little wild last couple innings, fifth and sixth inning, but typically had his typical good, filthy stuff. And the other guys came in. The relievers did a fine job, got some timely hits. It was a little chilly day in Pittsburgh, but my Pirates got it done over the Cardinals 4-1. It was a great way to start the season, and I am really glad that baseball is here. I think maybe I've said a couple times that I'm not a hockey fan at all. To me, it's just soccer on ice. And I really have kind of gotten away from college basketball. I used to watch that all the time. I've kind of gotten away from it. Didn't watch any of the March Madness games, maybe pieces, but no complete game at all. And then another good thing coming on this week, besides the start of the baseball season, is the Masters Golf Tournament this week. My favorite golf tournament, and I'm looking forward to taking that in later this week. It's funny, one more thing before I get started in the show, maybe a personal thing that there is a guy, as I've told you, when I lived in Las Vegas, I worked at Star Trek The Experience from 2000 to 2004. I was an actor/ride operator. And there is a guy who I used to work with who does kind of he collects all the pictures that he can, and he took a lot of pictures while he worked there of us working, us joking around, over those years, and he has gone out all over the internet to find any pictures that were taken of the experience while it was open from 98 to 2008. And he posted some pictures this weekend that he found of me with my friends there, and it just brings back so many memories, because that's like 12 years ago now for me, 12 plus years for me. And it's just amazing thinking about all those times. I look at those pictures and I say, we didn't know how good we had it. And I say that even though, to get into the political angle of this, most of the people I worked with there are very liberal, and I had many, many political arguments with them over those years that I worked, the 4.5 years. But still seeing them in the pictures, me in the pictures, we're all very much younger back then. It brings back nothing but great memories. The funny thing is it closed in 2008, right when the new movies were, the first new Star Trek movie came out, which didn't make any sense to me. So, I don't know. But it just brought back some nice memories this weekend, and I have to thank him for posting those pictures. There were like 9 different pictures of me within my Star Trek outfit uniform. Just funny stuff. So let's get to the show. I spend so much time, I say that, but a lot of time. But if you've been listening to this show for a while, I've come up with this saying about women regarding politics. We as conservatives, we are driven nuts by how many women over the years, and it seems like more and more, vote Democrat. We know that women, way more women than men vote Democrat. It seems like the Republican Party and conservatism goes more with men and liberalism, and the Democrats go more with women. And I've come up with the idea that maybe women do this just because they're liberal hacks, just like men can be. We conservatives, we get so caught up. Now, granted, we talk about Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton, but I think in general, we think of liberalism. We think of Barack Obama. We think of Harry Reid. We think of men first. Maybe that's just me being chauvinistic. I don't know. And we get frustrated because we believe that liberalism has really hurt women over the years, especially poor women in particular. And we say that about, of course, about blacks, whether they're black or white. We can say that about a lot of different groups. We have a tough time figuring out why they vote the way that they do. Where it seems very sensible to us, very rational to us, that at some point you'd think that they'd change, just to see what it would be like to vote for a Republican or a conservative just for once. Just one election cycle. Give us a chance, just to see. And we banter this back and forth over and over and over, and I've just come to the conclusion that maybe it's just that women are just hacks. They can be just as irrational, hypocritical as men can be regarding their politics. How about that? Well, now it could be, and there's a huge bit of irony here, that it could be women, moderate women, and somewhat conservative women who are going to, in the end, save us from Donald Trump. And maybe even Hillary Clinton. Because if you don't know, in each of those cases, I guess we could start with Hillary first. Granted, I was looking at this article, and this comes from where? This comes from National Review. They did a article there detailing how Hillary's numbers among women are terrible. Now, granted, among Jewish women, black women, women who identify as liberal or Democrat, she does fairly well. But if you can believe this, among women who are still undecided, I guess that would go across the political spectrum, not just women who are registered Democrats or anything like that, but just women in general who anticipate voting for president in 2016, Hillary Clinton has an 8% favorable rating. 8%. Even Donald Trump looks at that and says, dang, that's low. We know that that Hillary Clinton tends to be a very polarizing figure, much more than her husband ever was or ever will be. And I don't think it's just because of Benghazi or her emails or anything that she did as Secretary of State. There is just, I think, this view out there that, and granted, I don't even think that these people, these women who have unfavorable ratings are necessarily conservative. I don't know how many undecided conservative women there are out there. These are just women who have not decided among all the possibilities who they're going to vote for in 2016. So it could be a wide array of women, and it's still 8%. She just turns women off as much as she turns men off. And I'm sure if we could track down some of these women and ask them a variety of questions about why they feel that way, they'd probably come up with a lot of reasons. And once again, those reasons would not be Benghazi, the email controversy. And this is why I said a year ago, if not longer, in relation to me doing this show, that as much as we as conservatives get animated about Benghazi and the email controversy and how it's going to cost Hillary Clinton, in the end, it may be we just have to be happy that people don't like her for other reasons. Would that be good enough for us? Is it okay if Hillary Clinton doesn't get voted as president of the United States, but she never pays for the email controversy or Benghazi? It certainly is okay to me. Keeping her as far away from power is fine with me, unless, of course, Donald Trump is the other choice. And we'll talk about him in relation to women in a second. But it could be this unfavorable rating that women have of her, these undecided women, that will keep her from getting elected. Mm-hmm. And I really don't know how many of these women are really that politically versed to go into a in-depth explanation about Benghazi or emails. Now, on the Republican side, when it comes to Donald Trump, it's kind of the same thing, but his ratings, his unfavorable ratings, his favorable ratings are not as low as Hillary's are, but it's the same situation. Just to put it bluntly, women don't like Donald Trump. He is a very polarizing figure among women. There, of course, are women who are voting for him. That's the only way he could do as well as he has done in all these different states, is because a lot of women have showed up and voted for him. But that's pretty much it seems. Every single woman that he has gotten to vote for him in all these states so far are probably the only women who are going to vote for him if he would get the nomination, he'd run in a national election. Those women who vote in the primaries, that's it. And that so many women in the primary process have not voted, who have not voted for him, that is the main reason he can't wrap up this nomination. It's not because of the men. It's because of the women. We know there are more women than men in the United States, in fact, in the world, for a variety of reasons, one of them being women live longer than men do. Men tend to have more issues with addictions and things like that, so we don't live as long. And so there are more women out there. More women than men vote in the United States in our elections. And that's one of the reasons that have kept the Democrats as competitive at the presidential level as they have been the last 12, or last 20 years since Bill Clinton got elected. It's been mainly because more and more women are voting. And that's fine. We have to find a way to get them to vote conservative. We have to sell our wares, our services, our product in a better way. Not change our product, but we have to sell it to them better and help them see the light regarding all of this. But in these primaries, it's safe to say that if Donald Trump was just a little bit different, if he'd have been able to shut his mouth, keep his mouth shut longer or more, use less words, not go after Megyn Kelly, not go after Heidi Cruz, all of this, it very well may be that he'd be a lot closer to getting that 1,237 number. Those number of delegates that he needs sewn up. But it's these women who don't like him for whatever reason that are saving us. And I just want to send out a big thank you to all of you. Thank you. And I know that it may be because you're not as conservative as I am, or for whatever your political leanings are, I don't even care. Thank you for not voting for him. And for all those women who are in upcoming states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, wherever else, California, for all of those women who are also in those places, they know they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. I want to thank you in advance as well. I hope between now and whenever your primary is that you can convince some of your female friends to not vote for him. I'll thank you for that in advance as well. Because had women so far been maybe a little bit more lenient, I'm not saying they should have been. I'm glad they've done what they've done. A little bit more lenient. If they would have just said, well, it looks like Donald Trump's going to win anyway. I'm going to vote for him, even though I'm not thrilled about him. Had any of those women in groups thought that way, there's no way that this would still be a contest. Instead, I'm glad, I'm sure, in fact, once again, I have no information, study, research, anything to back this up. But there's no doubt in my mind that there are many women who have voted for Ted Cruz in all of these different states who as conservative as Ted Cruz is. But I think that these women voted for Ted Cruz because they looked at Donald Trump and said, he is bad for women. He does not love women. He sees them as objects. He does not respect them. Yes, Ted Cruz is way more conservative than I'd probably like. But here's what I know. I know Ted Cruz doesn't dislike women. He doesn't treat them as objects and all that. And that's good enough for me now. And I want to send a thank you out to all those women as well, who I know probably, being that so many of these other people have dropped out, you might have preferred voting for Marco Rubio or Scott Walker or Jeb Bush, or and when they dropped out, you were kind of befuddled about what you're going to do. Who am I going to vote for? John Kasich, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump? It would kind of seem like your average Republican woman's version of hell, having those three choices. So, for different reasons, of course. But it seems that a lot of them have said, you know what, we're going to have to get on the Ted Cruz train. He's the best choice of the three. And they maybe have to hold their noses. And I want to thank you for holding your noses and going to vote for Ted Cruz. And for all that, once again, for those women who are going to do it, I want to thank you as well. All right, because to me, your assessment of Donald Trump is absolutely correct. I do feel like you do, that he doesn't respect women. I think that he sees them as being weak, as something to be, manipulated. Trading in his wives for newer models. Forgive the pun. So, and I understand, hey, that ticks women off. That ticks women off. And so, his political positions, whatever you think Donald Trump's political positions aren't even the main instigator of why I think these women are doing what they're doing. And just much like with Hillary Clinton, it's just something about those two that turn women off. Something about their personality, how they handle themselves. In Hillary Clinton's case, it could be that there are some women out there who truly may think like her in some political issues, but think she wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for her husband. And women can be, frankly, a little catty like that. Is that what it's called, catty? I don't want to go and say petty because I don't want to portray it that way. But they can be a little catty like that. Little envious. We know that exists. I really don't care at this point. Whatever keeps those women whatever keeps them thinking that she's only favorable a very, very little bit is fine with me. Fine with me. And then with Donald Trump, between how he has treated the relationships with the women in his lives, women who were supposed to be his equals. I don't even know how many daughters he has. I know he has at least one daughter. I don't mean that, but the women who he was married to, where it was supposed to be a mutual relationship, an equal relationship, and then he just threw those women over. So it's all fascinating to me. So after a few years of making fun of women for the way they voted, I'm for once going to send a shout out to those women who I think have a good chance of voting Republican this time and have chosen to go against Donald Trump. I want to send a thank you out to all of you. Let's move on to something else. This primary situation, these delegates, if you don't know, this weekend, some delegates were picked out in North Dakota. I think there was some delegate maneuvering that went on in Colorado. There's the story that it came out of Louisiana at the end of last week about how even though Ted Cruz and Donald Trump essentially tied for delegates, at least seemingly in Louisiana. It turns out that in the end, Ted Cruz is going to come out of that state having way more delegates in his pocket than in Donald Trump's pocket. And I just want you to know for the record that it is kind of shaky. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But it's not like, on the other hand, they're making up the rules as they go along. The truth is that these are the rules that have been in place in the Republican Party for a very, very long time. All right? They just didn't start because they knew Donald Trump was going to be a front runner. They just didn't start going into back rooms, middle of the night, and rewriting all of this stuff. This is the way it's been for a long time. The reason I think the average Republican, including myself, has not realized this is because these mechanisms have never been used before. It's never been quite this close. Even going back to 1976 with Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan running the whole way to the end, that was kind of a unique situation. Well, this situation, at least it seems at this point, on April 4th, 2016, is even more unique in that one. Now, it may get to the end of this, and it may be pretty cut and dried, but we don't know right now. It seems pretty convoluted. But all of this idea is, well, the people voted, and it was a certain percentage, and because Donald Trump got 40% of the vote, that he should get 40% of the delegates, and because Ted Cruz only got 20% of the vote, he should only get 20% of the delegates, just a hypothetical. That's not the way it works, and it never has been. And really, I don't think it's going to change even after we're all done here. And I think once again, this goes to show, and a point I tried to make last week, is that in our particular system of government, people do not necessarily pick who is president. I know that's a mind blower for many, many people. But once again, like I said last week, you have to go back to the Founding Fathers. They were not big fans of democracy. They were students of it. They knew what happened in Rome. They knew what happened in Greece and wherever else before their 13 colonies came along. And they saw all of the problems that crept up. But this is the reason that states and state governments vote for president. There's a reason we don't have a popular vote for president in the United States. This once again goes back to what I was talking about last week. And the way you see what is going on both sides, both on the Democrat side and the Republican side, is a sign of that. That, yes, Republicans, in each of these primaries, they show up, they vote. I did here in Florida. I voted for Ted Cruz. It was a month ago or whenever it was. And all that is, at this point, is a signal. It is a signal to the Republican Party that is the person I would like to have represent the Republican Party for president. It is not an actual vote. It's just a signal. It's like a little letter. My personal one-man letter to the Republican Party. It is, how would you put it? It is an opinion. Let's put it that way. It's just we didn't notice that until this year. It's always been like that. Now, the Republican Party can blow me off. It could blow everybody off. But it would do so at its own peril. If you blow too many people off, and that's why there have been many articles out in the last few weeks about, it seems to many people, like Jonah Goldberg had an article about this recently, that no matter which way the Republican Party is going to go regarding the convention, a large group is going to be unhappy. That's probably true. They're just going to have to pick what group they dislike the most. and which group they like the most, and what group is going to get favorable treatment enough that the party can stick together. You got to remember all this. This is still driven by the market. It's still driven by the market. The Republican Party is going to try to figure out how does it remain viable. At the same point, at the same time, it wants probably a certain person to represent it as well. So a lot of different things have to be juggled. And once again, I'm going to say this. This isn't new. It's just didn't realize it. It's no different kind of than starting your car. For so many times, you just get in your car, turn the key, and there, boom, boom. In a second, the engine's running. You turn on the air conditioning. Everything's right. You put it in drive, and away you pull. However, it's that time you get in, and you turn the key, and nothing happens. And if you start looking at it, you suddenly realize, well, when I turn the key, this connection is connected, and then the electricity goes from the battery to the starter, and the starter kicks over, and there's a little spindle that turns something on the engine, and that's what kicks it over, and then the gas gets sprayed in, and the ignition process starts, and that's what keeps the engine going. That's how your car gets started. But to you, 99.9% of the time, it's just you turning the key and it starts. Well, right now, we're figuring out all of that in-between stuff, between the key getting turned over and the engine running. That's what's being exposed right now. And truthfully, the way all of this works is that you have to understand this process. And see, this is one more reason that I have a fear of a Donald Trump presidency. And it's one more reason that I believe that as much as I dislike Hillary Clinton, I know she's a liberal kook, overall, she'd probably be a better president than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump obviously, or neither he nor his people, care about details. You can say all you want about Hillary Clinton, whatever else, but she knows how the system works to get elected, and it seems to me she might be that way as president. And even though I know she'd be a horrible president, I worry about a president who isn't concerned about details, because the details matter no matter what the topic is. And as much as Donald Trump may say what an expert he is and he's going to hire the best people, there is no proof of that at any point so far in anything that has to do with his campaign. From his campaign manager to his campaign spokesman and to all of these people who are supposed to be representing him in all of these states, in how the delegates are counted and how the delegates get spread out. Now, I realize I can stand here and tell you for the last 40-some years that I didn't know the intricacies of all this, of what goes on in state to state. And the tough part is every state's different. In North Dakota, these delegates are free to do whatever they want. In some other states, delegates have to vote for a certain candidate on the first round of balloting. If you don't get the 1237, then they're free to do what they want. And it varies from state to state to state. And it takes concentration and study to understand all of this. And like I said, I realize that I'm just finding this all out. But the difference is I'm not the one who wants to run for president. I'm not the one. I don't think I'll ever want to run for president. But here's what I know. If I did, I would make it a point at some point to make sure I understood what happens after these primaries happen and how these delegates get dished out. Doesn't seem that the Trump campaign was too concerned about that. And because they're now behind and they're caught flat-footed in all this, they're saying that the procedure is cheating, that they're making up the rules as they go, and that's not the truth. The truth is, these are the rules. You may not like them. You may hate them, whatever the case. This is the way they be. You could have studied up on it. You didn't. And now you're losing delegates because of it. And that's on you, Donald Trump. I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to just continue this for a moment. I had mentioned in the first half of the show about the Founding Fathers and how they were not the biggest fans of democracy. Remember, it would have been very easy for them in setting up the United States with our Constitution, with our separation of powers, that would have been very simple for them to just say, you know what, we're just going to elect the president by popular vote. Just all the 13 colonies and whatever other 13 states and the states that we add on after that, that as people get added in and become citizens of the United States, that when the president is up for election every 4 years, people just go and vote, and it's just as simple as can be. Instead, they put this mechanism, the Electoral College, between the people and the president. They didn't do it just because they wanted to make everything more difficult. I think the Founding Fathers were fearful of what can happen with a majority of people thinking a certain way. They were fearful that the majority would take advantage of the minority. And of course, they were already dealing with the issue of slavery and a lot of other issues at the time, but they were fearful that the last defense, the last safety for a minority that doesn't vote a certain way for president, because the president they knew was going to be the commander-in-chief, and that's the way they set it up. But they wanted to make sure that the majority couldn't just vote to do something against the minority using the presidential office, which was the commander-in-chief. And they thought that if they could spread that power out, this huge power of being able to elect this executive who would be in charge of the armed forces, which at the time, of course, was just not even the Navy. The Navy didn't get created until Thomas Jefferson technically was president, because of Muslims, by the way.
Talk radio the way the Founding Fathers would have done it.
I'm just a man trying to make his mark on history.
Red State Talk Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit for the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed, Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at nemoarms.com.
Less than 2% of America's population volunteers to defend our nation. Though we rarely see them, we live the benefits of these heroes' sacrifices in the freedom we know and the safety we feel. Each and every day, the Gary Sinise Foundation serves our nation by honoring our defenders, veterans, first responders, and their families. We do this by creating and supporting unique programs designed to entertain, educate, inspire, strengthen, and build communities. The Gary Sinise Foundation has grown because the need has never been greater. Together, we'll improve the lives of thousands of American heroes and their families day in, day out, all year long. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, our veterans, our first responders, and the families who stand by them, we can always do a little more. Join us. Visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
Hi, I'm Gil Fulbright. The people that run my campaign, they've made this commercial, and I'm in it. This campaign, it's not about me. It's about crafting a version of me that'll appeal to you. A version that visits random work sites with paid actors pointing at things. A version of me that doesn't find old people loathsome or pointless. Has a conventionally attractive yet curiously still family. Listening to my constituents, legislating, these are things I don't do. What I do is spend about 70% of my time raising funds for re-election. I'd do anything to stay in office. My name's Gil Fulbright, but hell, I'll change my name to Phil Goldbright or Bill Fulbright or fill up my mouth with farts. These are the things that are important to me. And these are the fine people that finance my campaign. Now, in order to do these things, I have to stay in office. And to stay in office, I have to keep these guys happy. Now, if any of these things make these guys unhappy, well, my hands are tied. So come November, the choice is clear. You want another spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? Or a spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? I'm Philip a Mouth with Farts, and I approve this message.
They saw the idea of states, not people necessarily, but states, the legislatures of those states, voting for president as a way to protect the people who wanted to vote a different way for president. That's what they're fearful of. And that is kind of, once again, this is kind of, and in that way, I know some people may look at it as, well, they were elitist. They're a bunch of rich white guys. They only wanted to allow landowners to vote, and women weren't allowed to vote. And in that way, I guess they were at least a little bit elitist. But for a bunch of elitist guys, it sure does seem funny that they were so worried about people's rights not getting trampled. Right? You got to remember something, and this is what made the American Revolution so much different from the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, is that the American Revolution was led by a bunch of rich people. And I think in the end, that's why, and I know, liberals don't want to hear this, and poor people don't want to hear this or anything, but that is why, in the end, our revolution ended up working for the better. And all of theirs kinda, and definitely in the Russian case, definitely, the Russian people were definitely worse off once the socialists and Lenin and Stalin came into power. But the French Revolution, it's kind of a wish-wash, kind of some good and some bad, and you look at how many times their constitution and their republic has been changed since their revolution, switching it over and over and over. But it's the reason that our revolution lasted. And that we've, despite our huge federal government, we've been able to keep those ideals prominent for over 200 years. The big difference, it was rich people that led it, and not poor people. Not poor people just being disgruntled and angry and wanting their stuff. Whereas in our revolution, it was a little bit more pure. It was a little purer than theirs. And I think that means something. It does. And I think that is reflected in the way we set up our government. Because we know, here's something you got to realize. In those other revolutions, the poor people being angry at all the people in power, those people who were overthrown, Tsar Nicholas, the king in Russia, we know what happened to Anastasia and the rest of them. They were all killed. Right? Dump people out of power. Same way in the French Revolution. But in our revolution, we had a war. We fought England over it. That's true. But we didn't execute people just because they happened to be in power before the revolution happened. For whatever British people were here kind of somehow running things here and there, those people didn't get taken to the stockyards and hung. Heck, we had in our country, we had a bunch of British soldiers who killed a bunch of colonists, and guess what? They got defended. Who was it? John Adams or one of those guys defended the British soldiers. That's the kind of people we were. You think that ever would have happened in Russia? Think that would have happened in France or any other revolution that you can think of where the occupying soldiers shot people? You know what the people would have done? There would have been a riot, and those soldiers would have been dead. Not here in the United States or in the colonies. It's not what happened. Because we're different. Because I think, once again, our people who wanted to set this country up in a different way saw the flaws around the world. They knew history. And they needed to protect against the mob, against the rioters, against those people who at some point just might happen to be in the majority and have bad intentions. And I give our founding fathers a great, deep respect for all of that. Let's move on to something else. The Panama Papers. You know what? Have you heard about this? This is something, there is a law firm in the country of Panama called Mossack Fonseca, M-O-S-S-A-C-K, and then capital F-O-N-S-E-C-A. Mossack Fonseca is a law firm that their records have been leaked. I don't know if it got hacked. I don't know if there was somebody working for this law firm in Panama that felt this information needed to be disseminated to the rest of the world. But I think that the information wound up at a newspaper in Germany, I think. And it's exposing all of these different leaders in the world and how they have gone about getting around tax laws. There's a prime minister of Iceland. Vladimir Putin's name comes up in this, and some people connected to him. The funny thing is that the one country that is left off of this is the United States. There are no people, as of yet, any business leaders or government leaders, either currently in office or retired, that their names have been released yet. Now, it may be that could happen. But I also think, given what I think I know about these people who go about releasing information like this, that they would love to be able to show American business leaders, political leaders getting caught up in something like this. But so far, not one American has been mentioned. This is always interesting to me, and this goes back to Edward Snowden and with what he did, and then Julian Assange from WikiLeaks and all of the information that he got his hands on and released to the world. That it's funny, and I know in both of those cases there's some issues that popped up regarding the United States and the NSA and some things that it was doing that we didn't know about. But it's funny how every time one of these huge incidents happen where we find out, the average person finds out information that we're not supposed to know, is pretty much you find out pretty much what you expected. And these conspiracy theorists who were talking about this and talking about that, Bush lied. He's the one that caused September 11th. He knew about it beforehand. And the Israelis had something to do with September 11th. None of that ever proves to be true. So these kooks, they get all excited about this information. Finally, we're going to find out. And then it's not the information that they think. And it turns out a lot of the information you find out is kind of maybe stuff. I mean, is anybody really surprised that Vladimir Putin's hiding money somewhere? Is that really surprising to anybody? Is it really any surprise that there are world leaders out there who try to get around tax laws and fake papers? Not to me. Of course, in the United States, we think about the Grand Cayman Islands. That's supposed to be a good tax haven where people can hide money. Most people know what a Swiss bank account means. Even though most people will never have one, they know what it means when you say Swiss bank account. They think about very private banking laws where you can put money into an account in some Swiss bank and nobody will ever know that it's there. But it's just amazing that we're always told if you ever knew what was going on behind the scenes, you would ever be shocked. And then when the information comes out, yes, there are some prizes, but you find out that's pretty much what you thought. I made that point, and that would have been before I started doing the show for Red State Talk Radio, that when all the WikiLeaks come out, I was looking for where is that stuff about how George W. Bush knew there weren't weapons of mass destruction and he sent us into Iraq anyway. New information on that. Where's the information in there regarding George W. Bush being behind 9/11? Nothing in there about that either. Where's it in there about how actually the Jews were behind 9/11? Nothing in all these secret emails and information. None of that in there either. Wow. So it's like I said, I keep saying it. It's just very interesting to me. All these rumors, innuendos, and you find out pretty much, because if anybody would know, it would be these guys who have the inside line on all this stuff. They're mixed up in being able to hack into computer files. And hey, look at that. Why? Let's go back to this. Why do you think we even know about Hillary Clinton and her email server? You know why? Because of a hacker, that Guccifer guy. Like Gucci, handbags with an F-E-R in it. So it's like Lucifer and Gucci put together. Guccifer. He's hacking all over the place, getting into email accounts for Hillary Clinton, Sidney Blumenthal, just doing stuff all over the place. Never ran into any information that the Bushes were behind anything. No information that Dick Cheney was behind anything. All these, the Council on Foreign Relations and all of this conspiracy stuff. The liberals have been talking, and too many right-wing kooks have been talking about for decades, just nowhere to be found. Maybe because it doesn't exist. How about that? We have hospitals in the United States that are getting hacked and they're getting blackmailed and all this. But still, it doesn't seem like these great hackers can get their mitts on any really, really good, juicy information regarding all of these conservatives and Republicans who they have been making fun of for decades. Maybe just because it doesn't exist. So another point about this Panama Papers stuff is I can't help but think that a lot of this money that has ended up in Panama or wherever else from these foreign governments has to do with our foreign aid. The money that we send to these countries that doesn't get into the right hands. And foreign aid has been, a complaint by all sorts of people on the left and the right for different reasons for a long time now. And I personally have nothing wrong with foreign aid, but when you start getting the idea that a country is depending on it, and that also that the money is going right into some rich dictator's next Rolls Royce, then it gets to be a problem. And I think that's what we're seeing here. It should also show you something else, and this is a point I've tried to make to you for a long time, and maybe you don't believe me, but you should, is that when we start talking about American corruption, I think that this Panama Papers story shows, among other stories that have come out over the years, especially like China, for example. I've told you, compared to China, when it comes to the topic is corruption, the United States, we are a bunch of choir boys. We are a bunch of nuns compared to the corruption that happens in most of the world. That doesn't make what the corruption that goes on in the United States right. It doesn't. But it should show you that we are well behind the rest of the world when it comes to corruption. So when liberals start bashing the United States, how crooked we are, and we're this and we're that and we're everything else, all you have to do is start looking at stories like this Panama Papers story to know that that's not necessarily true. The truth is that most of the rest of the world is worse. Now, I ask you a question. What if one of these countries and these leaders were in charge of an economy like the United States and all of the money that flows here? How corrupt? I mean, they're doing that in some countries where their GDP is minuscule compared to ours. Now, maybe not in Russia's case, but still, our GDP dwarfs Russia's GDP. But imagine them collecting all this money, becoming billionaires in these countries that their GDPs are like, a 20th of ours. What do you think if they were the leader in the United States? If they were in charge of an economy like that, overseeing an economy like that, what would they be? And then when you start putting it in those terms, it just shows you, despite us having a lot of bad relationships between government and business, it is nothing compared to what others would do if they were in charge of our economy and the trillions of dollars involved in our economy. I just want to keep that in mind before you go too much off the corruption angle of saying how bad our country is. Our country is corrupt is because people are corrupt. It just seems to me, though, that your average person in the United States, no matter how rich and powerful, isn't corrupt as most of the other people running these other countries. I know. You got to find something good in that somewhere. But I just want you to remember that. The Chinese, the Russians, all of these, major economies, the amount of bad stuff they have going on, you haven't seen corruption until you've seen some of these countries. So this is what I think of. One more thing. I didn't bring this up when it happened. I see Sarah Palin is going to be doing a new show. It's going to be like a courtroom show, like Judge Judy or Judge Wapner, the People's Court, something like that. I now maybe see why, not saying that she doesn't support Donald Trump, I believe she does, but it's weird that she came out and started doing these appearances for him right around the same time that the announcement for this TV show happened. Is that a coincidence? Granted, I've told you, I think that somewhere Sarah Palin has lost her mind. And I've said for a couple years now, before I started disliking her, she's doing too much of this reality show stuff. Well, she's going to do it again, further hurting her brand and hurting her reputation. I don't know. I just can't help but think she has lost her mind. So that's that. That's tonight's show. You can go to edwarddentzel.com where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book where you can download the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can also find my shows at SoundCloud, YouTube, Podomatic, Podbean. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can find me on Twitter Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Good night.